Now, I know you all are probably tired of me talking about which Lord of the Rings online classes you should play and which ones you shouldn't. However, I have played this game for actively about 12 years or so, and I have soloed for majority of that. I don't really focus on group content or raids or anything like that personally, so soloing is my wheelhouse. In this video, I'm going to rank which classes are best for soloing in my personal opinion. You can take it with a grain of salt, you don't have to follow it whatsoever. As long as you're playing LOTRO, I'm happy, you're happy. Before we get into that, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It helps greatly with visibility in the channel, and I would just so greatly appreciate it if you do want more Lord of the Rings online content. But now let's hop into that video, shall we? Alright, so I'm actually going to start off with Beorning, as this is the first one on the list, and I'm gonna shock you here, okay? I'm moving this to S tier, okay? I recently played the Beorning for another video, the Beorning Blue Line guide video, which I encourage you to check out. However, when I played them, they are overall just super kind of overpowered in my opinion. Like, you don't have to worry about power at all. I had heals that were available to me, which I think I hit a heal about 3 times when I aggroed and pulled like groups of mobs. It's insane, groups of mobs. I'm not even over exaggerating when I say groups of upward of like 10 mobs that are my level, and I had no issues with just defeating all of them. Especially since, like I mentioned, you don't have power to worry about. You basically can hit all your skills. You don't really have to worry about a power meter, more so your wrath meter, but that's only if you want to go into bear form. Now, like I mentioned, I did focus on blue tier, which is more doing better damage and such in bear form. However, I never really got into bear form because I would be slaughtering these mobs in human form. Like, I was just too good in human form that me even working in the blue tier didn't even help me too much because I was hardly in bear form. I really greatly believe that Beorning is so good for soloing because you're very flexible, you have heavier armor, you're more flexible, so that way you can do like really great DPS and such. There's AoE skills for you. You also have like more long range abilities as well. Like, you can summon like a little group of like bugs and such that can attack enemies from afar. I always love doing that so that way they can come to you. And then also you have your heals available if worst case happens, and the heals don't even really cost much really ever. So it's almost like a really great ability and a really great class overall because you have such great abilities that can help you no matter what situation you're in. Perfect for soloing. Plus, with that armor, it's just so good, guys. Beorning S tier easy for soloing. Now, Brawler, I unfortunately haven't played too much of, and they're okay. Like, when I played them when I was soloing, they were decent. I just know that there's a lot happening with this class and they do need reworks. Now, I haven't played it super recently, so I'm not sure if there's really been any work done in comparison to the last time I played it, like over a year ago now. Though I do hear a lot of people are still talking about reworks for it. I'm hoping that LOTRO is going to do that at some point, Standing Stone. And they are a really good class in terms of armor, and they do have like decent melee skills essentially. Though, you know, that's about it. I mean, they're good for close combat. I mean, but so they're decent for soloing in that regard. Just, I feel like that they don't have a flexibility standpoint. I don't know if they really have much like damage over time or area of effect skills too much because I haven't played them. So definitely take this opinion with minimal like weight because I haven't played them super recent. So I'm just gonna put them at B tier because I really did like playing on the Brawler. I thought that that was a cool class concept, though I just didn't like the execution of it too much. But I was pretty tough overall. Like, I kind of felt like a guardian without a shield, which was really odd, but it did feel like a more a class that could definitely take like a couple of hits, so that made it good for soloing. But other than that, I mean, the damage was all right. Like, I don't really remember having any like super great skills. There were some longer duration skills that I liked that did do some decent like damage over time per hit. Though that's about it. Can't really speak too much on it. I haven't seen any heals really with the class, though. Comment down below if you can offer any more insight into that as well for Brawler. Next is Burglar, and I have to say that they're actually my most enjoyable class to play on my own. I love playing a Burglar. It's like my go-to class at the moment. You know, I don't even work on the stealth aspect of it. I haven't done many like stealthy things with my Burglar, and I still enjoy it because some of the skills are just kind of really cool looking. They're super creative. I just like the idea of the class in general. And they do have really good damage. They have a really good like dazes and stuns. So a lot of good just opportunities with the class that you could potentially get out of peril if you're really in it. And I feel like Burglars actually have probably the most abilities or skills that could help you if you were really close to potentially dying. Though I will say, this isn't really a class that I would like gather a lot of mobs together. It is more of like a stealthy class, so maybe you just take one out, like one mob out one at a time, essentially. That's how I always played with them. Though that's kind of what the stealthiness is for. Use it, unlike me, I never used it really, but it can actually help you quite a lot with defeating enemies, and especially when you're stabbing them in the back. Though, even though they do have probably the most abilities when it comes down to escaping death or nearly dying, that doesn't really help them too much just overall as a soloing class. I mean, they have medium armor, decent, good DPS, they got really great stuns and dazes that can last up to a minute. The one skill did. I could be totally talking about the older days, but I still know that that one skill, that one stun with the question mark on it, that skill is a banger. It has helped me a lot. And they do have some area of effect skills too. So overall, they have like a really good dynamic of damaging skills though. You know, the armor kind of sucks sometimes. I've definitely been in situations where I have died. If not, I've been super close to dying from just simple mobs. So I think I'm gonna have to put them on C tier. I'm sorry, Burglars. I enjoy playing the Burglar, but I think that's probably why I enjoy playing them so much, is because I do feel like they are one of the riskier classes overall. Like in a Beorning, I play the Beorning if I just want to like run around and just take out everything in my path, and Burglars, I feel like it's more of like a gamble. Next one is Captains. So Captains are super good for soloing, though the one thing that does kind of suck about them is that they have your pet, your companion, your sword, shield, maiden, person, whoever, who can kind of act as like a tank for you essentially, but you're pretty OP as a captain. I don't know why they give captains a pet, honestly, because why? You're pretty good as it is. Like, you've got heavy armor, you've got a two-handed sword, which does impeccable hits, let me tell you, with some of these skills. I felt like the skill durations were a little too long though. I know that they redid the captain a little bit, they reworked it, and I felt like they did make those durations a little less. Some of them a little more though, which was odd, but I think it's just because they're kind of reworking the power structure and such as well in LOTRO. Captains are really good for soloing, 100%. They are definitely a class that you can hold your own against a good amount of mobs, and you don't need to use your pet. I just kind of mentioned the pet right away because that's what I constantly think about with captains, is that they have a pet that almost acts like a tank for them in some regards, though you could probably run around without that pet and you'd be fine. You're totally fine. Honestly, I know you'd be fine. I do it all the time. I never pull them out. So it's really nice that they have like the heavy armor. The only thing about captains that is kind of disappointing for soloing is the fact that they're really at their best in group content, and they have a lot of skills kind of geared around raids and group instances, skirmishes, all of that. So whenever you're playing a captain solo, a lot of your skills you honestly just can't even use because they're supposed to help other people. They're supposed to provide hope and debuffs, which sometimes you can use for yourself. And then there's also buffs for other people, but hey, guess what? You're soloing, so like you can buff yourself, sure. But then there are skills just specifically for helping other people. So it does kind of suck in that regard. There are heals that you get like right off the bat that's more for like also healing other people as well. There is a heal for you, but it has such a longer cooldown as well in comparison to the other stuff. So I just want to kind of put that out there. Great class. They're super great for group content. Good for soloing too, though some of their skills make it a little limiting for you, because I do feel like it's a class that's just overall just meant for group content, period. I'll put them at A tier because you will survive, you'll be fine soloing it, though it does kind of suck that your skills are limited, because you can be a flexible class like Beorning, and you are a flexible class. However, you're flexible for other people. Like if you needed to be like an offhand healer, you could in group content. If you needed to be an offhand tank, you could in group content. You can kinda soloing, but like it's just not the thing. Next is Champion. Love the Champion. Great DPS. They have amazing AoE skills. They're honestly, to me, they're always going to be known for having the best AoE skills, or at least having as many as they do. And I overall just always love Champion. They've got that heavy armor. They're one of the best soloing classes. I'm honestly going to put them at S tier. The only thing that does kind of suck about them, you have a heal or two maybe, and you do have your ranged bow, so you can do a little bit of ranged skills. It's not like you're going to be doing anything like super crazy, but you can at least track mobs. If you have a lot of mobs on you, perfect. Great for those AoE skills. That's what they're made for. Come on. And you do have about a heal or two. You can get by in a Champion, though, you know, if you do end up being overwhelmed at any point, there's not really a skill that's going to be able to help you. You just kind of have to fight it out, or just, you know, take the L. So overall, great class. Flexibility wise, I do think Beornings are just overall more flexible because they do have more healing abilities and the DPS abilities and bear form and all of that. And then with Champion, you have like 1 or 2 heals, and then you also have like all your AoE DPS skills, which are great for mobs and for, you know, just one-on-one mobs. But overall, I think that they're a great class to do for soloing. Overall, just one of the better classes, especially if you're a new player. They're just one of the easier classes to pick up. So great class, love Champions. Next is Guardians. I think my bias is creeping in, guys. I don't really care for Guardians too much, and I will say that they are a great soloing class, 100%. They're tanks, okay? You're hardly gonna die. I mean, you can take a lot of good hits. That's great with your heavy armor, your shields, and all of that. Your defense is just the best out of any of the other classes, personally, in my opinion. Though, you also have some heals as well. So overall good. They also have that bow, like I was mentioning, just like Champions. They have like that simple bow and arrow skill, so like you can at least shoot a couple like arrows out to some enemies to track them over. So it just saves you a little bit of walking, honestly. It's not like you're gonna take them out with your bow and arrow. That's like, no, it's very minimal, simple damage. But my only thing with the Guardian is that I just don't enjoy playing them as much. Their abilities seem pretty standard. It almost seems like one hit type of damage in comparison to like bleed damage. They do have a couple of skills for that where it's some damage over time. However, there's not many of that, so a lot of your like single hits are essentially all that you have. So it kind of takes a little bit more time to kind of get through some of your bigger groups when soloing, so that does kind of suck. I just don't really care for playing Guardians solo because I just never had an enjoyment out of them. They were very slow killers when I played them, and yes, they've grown a lot since then, 100%. I see it, I vouch for them. I just don't really care for the defense aspect of them, because when you're soloing, your chances of survival are probably a lot higher when you know how to play the game. So with Guardians, I almost don't see the point of that defense for soloing as much, because I just couldn't see myself personally going out, getting all these mobs, and then taking forever to take them down because I have just really great defense. However, you could change that and take off the shield off the Guardian, then you wouldn't even really have too much of an issue, but then you can't use half your skills, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag there. I'm just gonna put them at A tier, honestly, because that's what I'm feeling personally. I could be totally biased. I put them at A and S. Like, I wish there was an in-between. I put them in between 100%, but I'm gonna put them at A tier. Next is Hunter, and I think the Hunter is probably the easiest and best class to start off with, especially when you're a new player. Pretty easy to grasp, great for soloing. Ranged abilities, melee abilities are so good. I love Hunter. There's so many different like variations of things that you could focus on. Like you could focus on being more of like a trap master and holding back some of your enemies that way with traps for any big mobs that you might have as well. You can also have like some fear tactics too, so you can kind of scare off any mobs that are needed, so that can kind of give you a little bit of a breather. You have like a heal or two, and there are just ways that you can survive against any big amount of mobs, or just, you know, taking out a mob one here or one there, you know. Pretty flexible overall, decent DPS, best ranged abilities in the game, 100%. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. I don't want to put them in S tier. I just feel like the thing with S tier is like, I just feel like Beorning's probably the best S tier on here because they're just too good. I don't know what it is. Like they have that heavy armor. Hunters don't have heavy armor. They have medium armor. So that's kind of like a saddening thing, but honestly, medium armor is good. You can survive with medium armor. I'm actually gonna say I'm gonna put Hunter at A tier, only because you definitely don't have a better survivability if you were to accidentally aggro people in comparison to the other ones that are in the S tier. Like especially with the armor aspect of it, that's kind of why I'll just put them at A tier. But I'm also mixed on that one too. I can't make up my mind with this, guys. It's too much. Next is Lore Masters. So this might disappoint a lot of people. I'm gonna come off right off the bat and say easy. Okay, I thought this would be easy. I'm just gonna put them at C tier, okay? Because this is the thing with Lore Masters. They have light armor. Classes have light armor. It's whatever. You do have a pet though. That pet can essentially be like a tank for you. And Lore Masters do have pretty advanced skills. They're great for taking out like multiple mobs with like one-hit strikes is kind of what I call them. It's like the Lightning Storm ability specifically, or like Cracked Earth. Like you could have great like AoE skills essentially that you target like from far away. So they have decent ranged abilities, and then that can just like completely annihilate like any mobs if you have built up and understand your skills well enough. However, if you're a newer player, I don't really recommend Lore Master just because they are pretty squishy, especially at first. They get a lot better the more that you work with them and you level them, though still a little tough in the beginning, very squishy. So with the light armor aspect of it, and then also if you use your tank of your pet, then yeah, it's an okay soloing class. You can get by. If you took away the pet part of your Lore Master, you're legit dead. Like you would not survive probably against 2 mobs at the same time. I think that would overwhelm your Lore Master. It's not the easiest class for soloing in that regard because you have to really use your companion in order to really live, to act as your tank. It's a little bit disheartening when you're first starting. So overall, that's just kind of why I put Lore Master at C tier. If you just take away the pet aspect of it, you don't really have any of your own heals, especially right off the gate anyway. And then you also just have a lot of abilities that can help further your group, but not necessarily yourself if you aren't doing any raiding or grouping content. And then next we're gonna move on to Minstrel. So I love Minstrel. Minstrel is like the first class I actually got to the level cap. At the time, the level cap was level 100. Clearly that's not the case anymore. But I actually soloed my Minstrel essentially the whole way through. It was not easy. It was not enjoyable all the time. Though I will say that this class was like the best class ever in my opinion. I really liked my Minstrel. Great skills that would just annihilate enemies, kind of like your Lore Masters. Even though they do have light armor, that's something to kind of think about, though they can get medium armor later. But overall, I just really had an enjoyable time with the class, and you had really great ranged abilities because you have a loot, or you can actually change your instrument later, though you can have an instrument and you can do damage from far away and essentially bring those mobs over to you. You could have groups of mobs. There was some AoE abilities and such, really great for healing yourself too. There's like stances that you have to follow, and one stance in particular will just be like nothing but heals. So that was really helpful as well. So it gives you flexibility in that regard. You're definitely like a healer. You could be a stance of in the middle ground, And then you could also be like a total damage annihilator, which is what I always did, and I loved it. So overall, I'm just gonna say that this is B tier just because, you know, like I said, it has flexibility. You can do heals, you can do really good DPS and such. However, overall, it's squishy. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely squishy. You can kill mobs very fast, but you're not going to last long once they start hitting you. So for soloing in that aspect, it was kind of hard to judge because you could aggro mobs, but if you aggro too many, you're probably not going to last that long. Next is Rune-Keeper. Now, if you guys don't know, I actually have been playing a Rune-Keeper on Twitch. That is my go-to main. It's up to level 75 at the moment. You know, it's good for soloing, but I've actually had my fair amount of enjoyment kind of over, like, I'm kind of just over it, is what I'm trying to say. I'm kind of over Rune-Keepers. I feel like I'm at level 75. I'm squishy. I can't last too long. Kind of like the same thing with the Minstrel. Really great damage. I actually focus on yellow tier for my Rune-Keeper right now. So I do more like lightning strikes and thunder. Really good for just like one-off hits. Perfect. Though, like I said, I'm squishy. And with them, it's really hard because there's nothing really to act like a tank, essentially. If you have a runestone, that's kind of like your tanking thing, where it'll just aggro kind of mobs towards you if they're in like the vicinity of where you're placing your stone. Though it's okay, flexibility wise, it can be a little bit more tough in comparison to like minstrels. Like minstrels, they specifically focus on a stance. So when you're going into it, if you want to be just strictly DPS and you don't have that many heals, you can do that. With Rune-Keepers, you kind of have to adjust and hope that you'll have enough time to adjust and before you die potentially with a group of mobs, because they have this thing, this attunement, where you essentially would have to hit skills and then that will further up, like, build your attunement. And then overall, if you wanted to do like more damaging skills, you would just keep hitting like your fire and lightning skills. And then if you wanted more heals and like better overall just healing ratings, then you would want to hit your heals more repetitively and like consistently. So if you're not doing that when you're a Rune-Keeper, then you know, it's a little difficult for your alignment to kind of give you like the best abilities, and that kind of has like a time segment to it essentially, because you have to keep hitting all of your damaging skills in order to get really good hits and damage off of your attunement bar. But if you needed to heal quickly, that means that you have to constantly keep healing, and the heals are really good, and it's a lot of heals over time in comparison to minstrels where it's a lot of one-offs. Though that's the thing with Rune-Keeper that makes them a little more survivable, is that they have heals over time. But because they do have like more medium armor aspects to it, and just overall their ability to be flexible is a lot less in comparison to other classes, I'm gonna give them to the B tier. And last but not least, we have Warden. And Warden's actually got a little bit of a rework. I'm gonna say, y'all, I'm not a Warden fan. I've just not really enjoyed them too much because I felt like their DPS and such is nothing compared to other classes. However, in the fact of soloing and the fact that they have medium armor and a shield, which is really good, they have decent ranged abilities with your javelin, and then also really good melee. If you can study the gambit system, pretty good for soloing, because I've literally probably hit about everything. You have heals that can help yourself, you have more damage over time skills, you have a couple of AoE, you have essentially everything that you need. Very flexible, like I've mentioned. So because of that, and as much as I'm not a fan of this class, I'm actually gonna give them the S tier, because they're super flexible. If you need to essentially get a really good heal, it's possible. It might take you a couple seconds in comparison to other classes, though you will be fine. You're not going to instantly die if you have a lot of mobs on you. You're definitely going to be very well off with the solo because of your shield and such, so your hits aren't really going to affect you too much. It's almost like you're a heavy armor class, honestly. And also what's really nice about them is that they have decent ranged abilities, which a lot of these other classes on the S tier do not. And hunters have the best ranged abilities, though I will say Warden, second best. And what's nice about the Warden and the reworks is that it actually takes you less time to kind of get through the gambit system now. From what I've played anyway, just seems like the duration of building up your gambit skills and all of those is a lot less, so you can do a lot more damage. However, I will say you cannot be playing a Warden with the way that this lag is going, because trust me, I replayed my Warden recently and I could not literally live for anything because the lag was so bad. But hopefully Standing Stone will fix that. But anyway, weirdos, this is what my overall ranking for soloing classes would be, okay? So I'm just gonna say this tier, this ranking system definitely shows that you can solo any class in LOTRO. It's not like you can't be a lore master now if you don't have friends to play with or you're not gonna do group content, because you definitely can. I mean, I've done it and I've gotten more lore master up to level 50 with absolutely no help whatsoever. So it's totally possible. However, you just might die a little more than, you know, say your hunters, for example. Anything is possible, but overall, you just really have to get a good understanding of the classes that you are playing. Anyway, I hope that this gave you some ideas, and I will see you in the next video, weirdos.